And
Yeah.
this is the NLP Connect Session of the 12th of May 2020, and the session is about resilience.
We won't forget 2020 in a hurry, will we? That's for sure. Yeah, one thing that we did when we were on another Zoom session the other day was simply to invite everybody to go into gallery view. Some of you, I'm guessing, will be in speaker view at the moment, but just to go into gallery view, and so you can see everybody else who's on the call today, and just kind of acknowledge them, just kind of give them a little wave, and we've left everybody's mics up at the moment, or some of you have muted.
Hello.
Just to say hi to everybody.
Hi.
It just really gives that sense of connection, and we thought it was just a very simple thing to do, and just worked very well. So we thought we'd pinch that as an idea. So.
And thank you, Anita, for waves all round. Thank you.
Just you know, if people are on logged in on an iPhone, they don't have gallery view as an option.
Oh,
okay.
That's true. They'll have to swick along quickly, won't they?
Yeah.
So
You have it on an iPad? Can you get it on an iPad? Because I can't see where it is.
No,
Oh, yes, I found it.
It's got speakers. Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing is you have less people on your view. On
Yeah. Yeah, I've got 9.
Yeah.
And then if you swipe one way or the others. So hello again, Jonathan, then, okay?
Hello.
All right. So at this point, we might choose whichever view you want. You can stay in that view, or if you put it on speaker view, that means when Kevin and I start to talk, you'll be able to see us, and if we share any slides, etc., that will be your dominant screen.
And are we going to do a muting at this point, Ree, and then the sound will be better?
Yes. So again, I'm going to mute all. You will have the facility to unmute yourselves if you choose to for any reason, or if we invite you to. But I'm unmuting now. And then I'll give Kevin the option of speaking, perhaps as a special treat. Can we hear you, Kevin?
I hope so. I hope so. I'm looking for thumbs up from somebody. Yeah, fabulous. That's great. So this is our 4th session of what we're calling NLP Connect. So it's great to see so many people again. And lots of you have been here for the previous sessions. The first one that we did was on developing habits. So we trust and hope that some of you have been developing some useful habits during lockdown. It's been an interesting time from that perspective. And just to remind you, those of you who were on the session may remember that we showed a diagram which was indicating that there is a line that where you expect to be on developing a habit. So let's say, I don't know, you're learning a guitar or something. You have a level of expectation which can be represented by line, but for a long period, or for a period at least, you are going to be performing under that level of expectation, but the line that you're actually following will at some point meet up with your expectations, and that's the point of surprise. So, you know, one day, whatever it is that you are learning, or whatever habit you are developing, all of a sudden, one day you will realize that it has become something that you can do, or it has become something that's part of your normal routine, and you will really surprise yourself. So I think that's a great message to take forward, because sometimes, you know, with the best will in the world, it does take a little bit of resources to keep that motivation going. So just keep that belief going that habit will become embedded, and be prepared to be surprised really when you get to that point.
Oh, it feels quite nice being prepared to be surprised. I like that, thank you. So this evening's session, I trust it's going to build very nicely on the previous sessions we've had. It'll also work as a standalone. Again, there might be some very new and interesting things we'll share with you. And it might be that we're reminding you of things you've already come across, that you already use in practice yourself, and that will be useful as resources and understanding for you at this time when we want to thrive and have the resilience so that we can make the best of what's happening and cope and respond in the most useful way for ourselves and those around us. Tonight's session, so we're going to do the basics. You know, what is resilience? We'll share with you some definitions and chat about that a little. We'll look at the factors that influence our resilience. We'll look at very swiftly reminders of some of the ways of responding and getting our mood state, managing our response when we're being taxed or challenged in the short term, like in the moment. What can we do if we're in there? And then we'll look at building that long-term resilience, almost the generative, you know, let's build that resilience muscle so it's there for us at any time, to whatever degree we may ever need it like this again, but that we've got that resilience and that muscle built in. And that's the sort of framework for the session. I think there's a couple of activities, there'll be a couple of opportunities for sharing things. I suppose for the most part it will be us sharing as well, sharing to keep it tidy. But if there's anything, I'm going to be keeping my eye on the chat if there's anything additional you want to share or question.
So you might want to grab a pen and paper to write down a few things as we go through. I'd like to start just with a little story first of all, if I may. This is something that Rita came across the other day, and I think fits today very well. So just kind of relax for a few moments. So one evening, a Native American elder told his grandson about a battle that goes on inside people. He said, "My son, the battle is between two wolves inside us all. One is anger, envy, jealousy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, and superiority. The other is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, and compassion." The grandson thought about it for a while and then asked his grandfather, "So which wolf wins?" The grandfather simply replied, "The one that you feed."
Wow. Okay. So as that settles within us, we'll start to look at resilience and wonder what we will or won't choose to feed. So in the first, well, what is resilience? So we're starting with that question. And I suppose most of us, when we ask that question, the bounce back concept seems to be very strongly there. It's that ability to bounce back. It's the elastic band that when you stretch it, it still retains its electricity or I can't even say it. What's that word, Kevin?
Elasticity.
Elasticity, thank you. It's that psychological well-being in the face of adversity. It's that you can face it, that you don't crumple, that you know you can stand proud in a psychological way. Interestingly, and I think very fortunately, it's interesting that it's considered not to be a trait that people either have or don't have, because it involves behaviours and thoughts and actions. It can be learned and developed in everyone. Now that's good news, isn't it? That it's something we can learn, and it's something we can certainly develop. I was just going to share this. Oh, will I share the slide here? One nice definition that we have here is it's the strength and flexibility to produce your best results in challenging times. So that's one we particularly liked. It seemed to encompass what would be really useful for all of us at this time.
Rita, there was some great visual metaphors that you again came across that be useful to share at this point.
Yeah, I think there's three particular ones that we all, metaphors are useful to help us understand things in just a different way, and I think we're all aware of that, using analogies or metaphors stand in our time and using lots of different things in different ways. There's three that seem to really work well with the concept of resilience. The first one here, I'll do the first, Kevin can do the second, I'll do the third, or whatever. Is that all right, Kevin?
Yeah.
We'll talk about the tree. Now, this is one that really works well for people. A tree is actually as strong as its roots, as it were. So you have the roots that go down below the ground. You can't always see it. And the roots then have the support the trunk and then the branches. And out there, when the tree's out there, it's out there in the environment, it's swaying and blowing in the wind. It has to be flexible and resilient to bounce back, but all that strength and resilience comes from the roots, the strong foundations and grounding. So like for ourselves, realizing and being connected and aligned with who we are can give us that strength and resilience when the environment we're operating in becomes windy, stormy, scary, that we know we've got our roots and foundations. We have that belief in ourselves and who we are. We have that connectedness with who we are as our essence within.
And the second one, the concept of the river. Sometimes when we look at a river, what we see on the surface is a lot of activity, a lot of movement, a lot of disturbance. But we know that if we go deeper down, there is a stillness embedded within. And again, I think it's representing this idea of sometimes what's happening on the outside is different to what's happening on the inside, where we have a little bit more stability.
And the idea of just sharing these three different metaphors is that one will sort of resonate with you better than another, and might just be useful to remind yourself on if you're ever feeling less resilient, just to remind yourself in the third story here, the third metaphor, that within us all there's this diamond, there's our essence, which is a fabulous, stable, shining bright light within, like the young child that's born, the baby that's born, pure and wonderful and smiley and just accepting the world as it is and able to just respond from their own essence. What happens as we grow older is that we sort of learn social norms, and it sort of hides us away, and we learn we start to worry about what people might think about us, and we get tied in again, and then we get hidden by all the other complexities of life as we start to think and believe different things, and we sometimes can lose the sense that this is still in there, that lovely diamond is still there to shine brightly. So just reconnecting again, I mean, all the metaphors are saying the same things. This is your stability, your core, whether it's the diamond or your roots, or whether it's that river that's flowing constantly at the greater depths whilst all the rest around is going chaotic.
So now you've got a sense of resilience being about this bounce back factor. What we'd like you to do is to just have a think about how is your resilience? How has it been in the last week or so? Have you felt, you know, that you have been bouncing back from the challenges that we're being presented with? Or have you been feeling perhaps a little bit overwhelmed, a little bit down about things? So we're going to share with you a little poll now, and we'd just like you to vote, and 10 being the highest in terms of feeling very, very resilient, 1 being very low in terms of not feeling resilient at all. The Rita is pulling that up as we speak.
I am indeed, because the one we saved earlier isn't quite with us. So if you just remind everyone to spend the next 30 seconds considering their rating. And
yeah, so just get a sense of it, write it down for yourself, keep a note of this anyway, and maybe this is something that over the next few days you can revisit. Hopefully what you'll do is implement some of the things that we're sharing with you today. Hopefully they will make a difference, and you'll be able to see that your score increasing as the week goes on, and as the sunshine comes out and the weather gets a bit warmer, as it's predicted to do later on in the week. Okay, I trust it's going to be here now for us. Let's have a check. There we go. I don't know where it disappeared. I'm just launching that poll now. So if everyone on the line, these are anonymous responses. We just get the global picture as a percentage of respondents. 10 being high. If you have been feeling very resilient, 10, very low resilience, 1, or somewhere in between.
Okay. And how many people? We've got 14 people out there. Oh, they're all coming in fast and furiously. The other 2 people are probably ourselves, Kevin. Have you responded?
Yes, I've responded.
All right, I'm going to end polling now, and I'll be able to share the poll with you all. Can you all see something there?
Yep, we can.
Okay, so that's interesting, isn't it? So this well, you can all see 8. I think there is a weighting towards the top, but there is a spread of how we're feeling. And of course, none of that's, I guess it's not surprising. We're all living through very different circumstances at the moment, different degrees of certainty and uncertainty. Our own situations can vary enormously. It's reassuring for me to see that there's a reasonably 37% of the 20 of us who rated it are feeling quite resilient.
Which I guess, you know, in some ways is hopefully reflective of the kind of people that we've got on here, I guess. I would expect you folks to be resourceful in lots of ways.
Yeah, and of course we just don't know what's going on in each of our lives in terms of reacting. So that was just a little feel to see where we're all coming from today. Okay.
Let's move on and look at you know, what are the factors then that influence resilience? Well, one of them, we came across some studies recently that talked about the impact of your genes, your genetic makeup on your ability to be resilient. And what we found by reading this particular study was they were attributing about 35% of your ability to respond well in these challenging situations and bounce back is down to your genes. Now, what that then does is it gives us this ability of 65% therefore can be developed. which is great news, and that's what we're going to focus some of our attention on this evening.
Excellent. So that is good news, isn't it? That in the nature nurture story, we've got a lot we can nurture and develop. What's interesting as well, though, in terms of the things that are at play for us, as human beings, there's also a predisposition to a negativity bias. Many of you may have heard of this. Just the fact that in evolution, we hark back when we talk about stress and resilience, we talk about how humans have evolved. And quite sensibly and logically, and whatever language we want to put to that, in the early days of humankind, it was really important. Safety was the #1 issue for people, for humans. And therefore, we have this innate capability of spotting threats and anything that might impede our safety. We've got that built-in radar that looks out for things that might be a threat to us. This in turn means that we have this negativity bias built into our brain and operations, our neurology. To keep us safe, we're scanning for things that might be a threat to us. We know that in the old days, we always talk about the saber-toothed tiger coming around the corner and you needed to react and respond to it and get out of the way. Of course, nowadays, sometimes that can just be an email, the inbox being full. We seem to still be able to respond in the same way. Or I think currently what we might be talking to here is about listening to the news, choosing, or what we're presented to, actually tuning in to some of the news, some of the facts and the figures, some of the scarier and extreme messages that relating to the COVID virus. I mean, it makes sense that when people were out, if they had to choose between looking for the saber-toothed tiger or noticing a beautiful rainbow or a pretty flower growing, it makes sense to look at that. But being aware that we have this negativity of bias and that it can be useful to know what's risky and to keep us safe, it's actually very important that we try to balance this in the modern world. Even the COVID virus, we're following the rules for it. Hopefully the majority of us are able to keep ourselves safe. There isn't a need to just run the scenarios of the negative and feed that negative bias. It may be useful for some of us or some of the people we're helping, either our colleagues, our friends, our family, or coachees or people we're working with. It may be very useful to help them build more positive radar to look out for the good things that are happening as well.
Okay, so some of the other things that impact our resilience, obviously our beliefs and values, and we're going to touch on that later. Those of you who were with us for one of our previous sessions will remember that we focused on these 6 human needs. So certainty and variety, significance and connection, and growth and contribution. And you know, obviously these are a factor, the degree to which these are being met are a factor in our ability to be resilient at this current time. One of the other things that's significant is our meta programs. Some of you will be familiar, having worked with us before, and I'm sure in other places as well, about the range of meta programs that we have that are guiding and filtering our responses. And there's one in particular that we wanted to just draw your attention to, and it's called the stress response. And it's one that doesn't get a great deal of mention. We talk about towards and away from and sameness and difference quite a lot in NLP terms, but the stress response is interesting because unlike the other ones, it has a third leg, as it were. So what this is about, briefly, is that some people are prone to go into a particular state and it may be an unresourceful state, and they stay there. So, you know, typically somebody gets bad news, that they really feel the impact of that bad news, and they seem unable to get out of that state quickly. Obviously represented by the heart side. The head side of things are people who don't really connect with those feelings, who are very much in their heads a lot of the time, and are not feeling those feelings, good and bad. And obviously there are some advantages, but there are a lot of disadvantages from running that meta program. The third one, and I guess the one that's most useful, particularly in terms of resilience, is the meta program that allows you to go into the feeling and feel the feeling, and then come out of it pretty quickly, and have a more conscious response to things. And it's kind of the best of both worlds, that one. And I think certainly in terms of long-term resilience, that's the one to practice. That's the one that will serve you well.
Indeed. Okay. So then moving on to consider how we are, what we've looked at there are really the patterns that are in play, and the meta programs, and our tendency and traits. We're moving on now to look at managing our response and managing our mood states in the moment. And I'm sure many of you, and we've all got our favourite ways of doing that, but just the gentle reminders, you know, there's nice and useful anchors. Having, what sort of anchors can we talk about? The music, playing nice music to get us out of the mood. So in the moment when you feel like, oh, actually it's getting too much for me, however that lack of resilience hits you, that whether it's a lack of calmness, whether it's a fearfulness, whether there's a building of anxiety or even frustration, you know, we'll all experience that in different ways. But simple anchors, having things around you, the music you listen to, pictures, little mantras that work for you, that say, oh, these things change. Things change. You know, you can have little mantras around you. In terms of the way you think, you know, notice. I mean, you'll hear us, we're like a broken record sometimes, Kevin, aren't we? We really do push for people to become more aware and to notice what's going on for them, to notice in your head and in your body what you think and what you feel, what you do with your body. They're the two factors that influence your mood state. So when you're thinking, if you catch yourself at the extreme doing catastrophizing, going into that loop where if this happened, then that happens, then another thing, and it's almost we get caught up in that vicious circle. Notice. Once you notice it, you can do a number of things. One of them is pause and stop it, and we'll give you methods we'll remind you of methods to do that. It's simply being aware. I'm catastrophizing. What if you just ask yourself the quick question, say, yeah, that could happen. What else could happen? And actually focus your attention on thinking about other possibilities. We'll talk about certainty and uncertainty later, but none of us knows what's going to happen. So why we make it up bad is quite interesting, isn't it? So just if we catch ourselves and notice, just choose to think differently.
Rita, just reminding them of again, a previous session where there was a very useful technique, which was this one, which is crash and coach. So again, the coach approach to things, if you weren't on that session, just Google this, have a look at it. It's an incredibly useful approach. Again, it's a Robert Dilts model. Being centered, open, aware, connected, and holding the space, you know, is a fabulous mechanism for changing your mood state very quickly.
And just, I mean, and the most simple, just in case we forget to mention it, the most simple way to manage and change your mood state is through your breathing. And the rate that you breathe in, inhale, and breathe out changes and alters what's happening with the rest of your neurology and your chemicals in your body. And to get into a state of calmness, you want to breathe out slower than you're breathing in. By breathing out slower, it clicks into the parasympathetic system and it allows your system to know that there's nothing to be fearful of. It's the opposite to breathing short and shallow and quickly, which is letting your body know there's something to be fearful of and setting out all sort of unuseful chemicals into your system. So just simply by breathing out slower than you're breathing in, you will come to a sense of calmness. And just to remember it, we just call it the 7-11 breathing. You could breathe in for 7 and out for 11, whatever counts right for you. And there was one other one I want. Oh, sorry, Kevin.
No, go on.
I was just going to mention the one other one before we talk about building our long-term muscle. Because it did relate to something we were saying before, again, about noticing. One of the things, you know, it is okay to feel sad or low or frustrated or angry. Things are changing. It's okay. Again, please, it's about noticing it. And sometimes it's useful to notice it, to name it. So it becomes an entity that feels more copable with. Now, sometimes we don't like labels, but in this instance, it can sometimes be helpful to notice, you know, when I just bit my husband's head off, actually, I'm feeling frustrated. It might not be anything to do with my lovely hubby Johnny, but, you know, just for me to notice that and say, oh, actually, I'm just feeling quite irritated, even if I don't know what it's all about. Just to give it that label, I'm feeling irritated at the moment. Then, of course, I'll do my breathing. And then I'll feel, okay, I might start asking myself, what is it that's not right? What of my human needs aren't being met? What is it that's about? And more importantly, if it's not serving me well, how would I rather feel? And what am I going to do about it? So that was all I wanted to share on that one, Kevin.
Okay, so let's look at how we can build that long-term resilience muscle now. So we're going to do a little activity. So if you've got a piece of paper handy, and what we'd like you to do is to divide it into 2 columns. And in the first column, what we would like you to do is just to make a list of things that you are hoping for, wishing for, wanting, desiring. So it could be at the moment, or it could be for when all of this is over. And write them down in those words. So, you know, I am hoping for, I am wishing for, I am wanting, blah, blah, blah. So we'll just give you a few minutes just to write a few of those down. Okay. So we're gonna come back to that in a moment, because one of the important things, I think, in terms of developing that resilience muscle is to be able to better live with uncertainty. And one of the fabulous quotes I like around this is from Bertrand Russell, who said that the problem with the world is that the stupid are cocksure and the intelligent are full of doubt. And I think we all come into contact with examples of that, and I'm sure we've done a lot of that recently. And I think this driver for certainty, we talked about it as being one of the 6 human needs, and I think it looms large for quite a number of people in their desire to have this knowledge about what's going to happen, about the security of being certain about things. However, most people's experience, and particularly at this point in time, is that it's very difficult, if not impossible, to get that degree of certainty that perhaps we would like. Therefore, if we are unable to change and influence that external environment to that degree, what we do have the power to do, though, is to manage our response to it, which of course is the typical NLP approach. You know, manage what you can actually change. So it's therefore becomes, how do we better cope with a higher degree of uncertainty that certainly is there at this moment in time?
I think the other interesting word in there, there's certainty, there's that sense of wanting to control. And of course, sometimes that can be useful if we create a little area that we can feel in control of. That can be a useful way of working as well. But as the bigger picture is that realization that actually, what's certain in life? Now that's a huge question, but if you actually stop and, well, what is actually certain? We might like to think that things are certain, but very little, if anything. You know, things are always changing. What we thought was certain 6 weeks ago isn't certain any longer. Maybe true that in the moment, it's in the moment that we can feel certain. I feel fairly certain, see how cagey I'm being? I feel fairly certain that I'm sat here, that I'm breathing, that I'm connecting with lovely people, that I'm thinking, that I'm feeling things. So in the moment is when I can feel that degree of certainty. But as I start thinking ahead, and even for those of you, we've done this before, thinking in the past, and we think our memories are real and everything, of course they're not. They've all changed because I've changed. As I look into the future, I'm making it up. So it can't be certain.
And I think
that's okay.
If we accept that premise, that the only certainty is that life itself is uncertain, I think once you acknowledge and surrender to that fact, to the fact you are unable to control that uncertainty, at least you'll be able to breathe a sigh of relief and let go of it. And I think in doing that, you may then open the door to a very powerful way of living.
We might use words like, I mean, we're saying this is quite a big philosophical, perhaps, thing to gravitate towards or welcome, that, yeah, it's okay that it's uncertain. But just to play with that idea, you might not be in a place and a time right now to accept it. Or you might say, wow, yeah, take that monkey off my back. I can't control all those things. Let them happen, and let me be in a useful and resourceful state and place so that I can respond in a way that's useful to me and those around me.
So there's a little activity which we've started, and we'd like to sort of do the second part now. So in column 1, you wrote down the things that you're currently hoping for, wishing for, desiring, wanting. In fact, anything that could open you up to disappointment, sadness, or upset in the future. So what we'd like you to do in column 2 now, against each of the things that you've written down, is to rewrite the sentence, but starting with the words, I wonder if. So rather than you know, I want blah, 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 rewrite that as, I wonder if blah, blah, blah. So again, we'll just give you a few moments just to do that.
And even just doing it, not necessarily for all on your list, but just the first 1, 2, or 3, just so you can we'll be inviting you to get that sense of how does that feel different, sound different to you. Okay. So, Kevin, do we want to invite someone to share an example, or will we chat through what we discovered earlier about when we did it ourselves?
Yeah, we could.
It's just time I'm looking
example.
at. Would someone,
I think we might need to carry the other exercise over to next time, actually.
Oh, there's a tease for you all. It's a really good exercise. But as is this, and I think you will get an awful lot from this. It's a very interesting, and it might sound a bit pedantic, just changing a word, but that's the power of words sometimes. Well, it's not the words themselves, it's what we do and how we interpret and make meaning of those words and the feelings we get. So has anyone done that and noticed that it's made an interesting difference that they want to share, or want a little bit of help or probing? Okay, is that Chrissy? Have you unmuted yourself, Chrissy? Would you like me to do it? I can do it if you like.
Unmute myself. Yeah. Am I unmuted?
You are unmuted. We can hear you.
A lot of the things that I had were very, very strong in the first column, and putting them into the I wonder one made me feel really flaky.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Are you
feel that they were less attainable than they were in the first column, where I was very self-assured and going for it and doing whatever. But once I put in the I wonder if, it left too much to be required, desired, and done.
So can I just ask on that, Chrissy, flaky, useful state or not useful state at this time?
Not useful state.
Okay.
It means that there is too much to think about. There is too much to put in place. There is too much to actually build on. Not enough, should I say. It's taken away the fundamentals of who I want to be.
Okay.
So it's eroded any strength that I had in thinking that.
Okay. All right. That's it's interesting that's kind of counter to what we might expect, in the sense in the sense that the first column, what's happening there is we are creating these desires, these wants, and therefore logging something away that is wanting us to work towards them. Whereas a response. Your response is what your response is, but I think what we might also expect in column 2 is a kind of letting go of those things. Maybe that's not right for you at this point, to let go of the things in the left-hand side column.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've been building up towards the future, and just putting it into a cloud for me lets it float too much, because there's quite an investment in it, if you like.
Yeah. Okay, let's hear another response, and then we'll come back to that.
Hands up, anyone? Visually or with the little, oh, Chris. Oh, it must be the name. Chris, I'll unmute you.
I got completely the opposite response. The first column almost felt like a done deal, that I wouldn't get what I was wishing for or hoping for. But when I started to rephrase it as I wonder if, I suddenly found I was writing different options. So one of them was related to going on holiday, and it suddenly became a holiday somewhere else, or not a holiday, but just a nice day away somewhere. I almost wanted to write, or will I be doing this and this and this, which felt equally as nice as the thing I was wanting or wishing for. Completely different response.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Why not, Nyla? We'll refer. It's just nice to have a few examples. Bye, Chris. The other Chris. It's nice to have a few examples so that we can just see how we're feeling about it. So, Nyla.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Lovely.
Yep.
Thank you. I responded the same way Christina did, interestingly enough, which is not what I was expecting at all. So how would I completely get you, Christina, completely. Literally, I felt really empowered saying, I want this, I desire this. I felt really empowered. And the moment I said, what I wonder if, it sounded like, well, I don't want to wonder. I don't mind wondering how I could do it. I don't mind that. But I don't want the I wonder if, because that's really disempowering. And yet I understand why you've asked us to do it. And I'm really curious about why I've responded the way that I have, and how I can up my energy back to where it was, because I don't like where it is. Do you like where it is, Christina?
No.
I need to go back up. So what do I do?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, that's great. I mean, just acknowledge that, and I think there's some key learning in there in terms of how you've responded to that. Okay, let's take one more. It was Mark, I think. Mark B was giving us a sign, right?
I'll unmute you, Mark.
Mark, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting that very varied sort of sets of responses. I'm not sure if I did the exercise right. I started to question myself, but I had some things that I might hope, sort of wish for, which were probably maybe quite big, but quite esoteric sort of ideas. And then I found when I went into the second part, what I then made me sort of think of is what was the purpose? Why is it I wanted to have, you know, a better motivated team? What was it that I was trying to achieve from that? So what it made me do is actually if the reason I want to do that, I wonder if I had this, I then wanted to continue the sentence to say, because it would give X or Y, which then gave me a sort of cyclical mechanism to go back and think, actually, I can do something about those things. I can't do something about the esoteric wish of something I might want to have, but this made it more grounded for me. So I actually found it, contrary to some other people have said, I actually found it as a mechanism for me to start focusing on what I could do.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for sharing that.
I think it's really interesting, the difference, and it takes me back, because when we're preparing this, Kevin and I sort of play out the exercises ourselves, and when I first did it, I felt really, I think I'm connecting with Nyla and Chrissy here. I felt the first thing I said, I want there to be, I really would like it to be, and I want there to be a better sense of community. I think I said, Kevin, it was something about that people are looking out for themselves a lot more. And I was feeling really good about that first thing. And then when Kevin asked me to then say, I wonder if there'll be a better sense of community. In a way, it brought me down. It was a different sense. I did the somatic. I was like big and up there with that first one. And the second one, I felt a little bit uncertain. And then, and I stayed with it a while, and I thought, I wonder if there will be a better sense of community. And almost, like I've just said, in my tone of voice, it changed, and it was something down here somehow. And it did a little bit like Mark was saying. So even though I felt like I'd come down a bit, it made me wonder, what can I do to ensure that that happens? What can I do? Or what difference would there be? So it sort of, it went from a very, if I've got the language the right way around, a convergent, I want this, to a divergent, oh, okay, possibilities. It might not happen in the way I perceived it. What other possibilities, and what could I do about it? So that's how I start. I mean, it sounds a bit like Chris as well, when Chris said about the holiday. It was like, oh, I really want, I don't know, to go to the Bahamas. And then I wonder if I'm going to the Bahamas. Oh, if I'm not going to the Bahamas, maybe going to the Lake District. I don't know, you know, there's something else. It sort of took me out of this closed bubble to a little bit more expansive thinking, because sometimes what we want doesn't happen, and that can be okay. So I felt this exercise was taking me to that gentle, okay, this is what I want, and I'll do what I can to get it. Actually, if it doesn't happen, oh, what else can I do? That's where it took me. That's not to say that where I went was right. I just wanted to share that as my experience, because I was hearing it relating to both or everything that people were saying, really.
I think what it can also do is as NLPers, what we're very used to is setting well-formed outcomes, for example. And, you know, imagining a great outcome in the future, positioning ourselves in the outcome, and that's absolutely fantastic. I think what this activity can do is to kind of redress the balance a little bit between that desire for certainty and becoming comfortable with uncertainty. And I think that's why it's quite a challenge for a lot of us. And I think is challenging some of our frames at the moment, and that's one of the reasons that we wanted to include it tonight, because it does kind of go counter to a lot of those NLP approaches, and it relates directly, I think, to this idea of becoming even more comfortable with uncertainty. Which I think is kind of helpful at this moment in time.
Nyla, you wanted to say something? I've unmuted you now. Oh,
sorry. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, so that was really useful what you said, Rita, and I was really not comfortable until you said it, and that's helped me to reconcile it. So in the context of resilience, I can see how it's really useful, where you can start out saying, I want this, I desire this, I'd like that. Then I wonder if, not presupposing it's not going to happen, but playing with the notion of the fact that if it doesn't happen the way that I would like it to happen, how else could I make it happen? So the fact that it becomes more of an expansive, results focused, and it actually aligns with values as well and purpose. So
which is what Mark said, isn't it? It prompted him. Yeah.
I might want to go to London by train, but what's my outcome? Is it going to London, or is it connecting with somebody? So COVID means that I can't go to London. How else could I connect with that person? I'd go on a Zoom call. So that's kind of how I'm reconciling what you've shared with us and taught us.
Chrissy, I saw you nod a little bit there, and it doesn't mean, you know, we're all experiencing all these things differently. Again, part of the exercise for me, it was like the not holding on to something too tightly sort of thing.
I think that's quite honestly what I'm learning through the experience, to not hang on to something too tightly, because if you do, you can suffocate it. So So getting the response, you know, from Nyla and yourself has been really productive in a new way of thinking and in a moderate way of approaching it, I think. So for me, it's been exceptionally useful, that part of it.
Excellent. Excellent, Chrissy. Okay, well, the clock doesn't stop for us. That's one thing we said.
I mean, just kind of opening it up, I think it's a good place to bring the session to a halt, but we're quite happy to open it up if anybody's got any observations or questions at this point. Just let us know.
Either that exercise or the evening in general, because we've just got another couple of minutes just to hear from you.
Okay, Angela, I think, is raising her hand.
I'm going to unmute everyone because everyone's so well behaved. I think it's safe to, okay?
Been really useful. I've been struggling with somebody who reports to me who's had some really, she's had a nasty experience with the sudden death of her husband, but has been struggling since then. And actually some of the stuff you said, I can really resonate why she has struggled, and I think this is going to really help me in my supervision.
Excellent. Okay, this proves me wrong now, doesn't it? Mute all. Okay, it was just a little bit of background noise there. Thank you very much for that, Angela. I have muted. Let's unmute. Oh, Kevin, you've unmuted yourself. Well done. Anyone else who wants to say anything? You're just scratching your head there, Jenny. Okay, can I invite anyone to share what they found most useful this evening? Just something that's prompted them or sparked. Or not. Oh, okay, I've muted everyone again. I'm not so good at this yet, am I? Okay, so I'm going to trust again, we're going to invite you to share any other feedback with us in terms of this evening. Great to hear that we've helped some of you shift your minds in places you may not have anticipated before. Try it on, see what it's like. Do what you can to live with the certainty you have and the uncertainty that surrounds us. And join us again in 2 weeks' time.
What we'll do, we had a fab activity which we were going to also share with you tonight, but time's a Guinness, so we'll carry that over to next time. It's about gathering your resources, so relates directly to resilience. So we'll do that in 2 weeks' time.
Brilliant. So we'll be continuing on some sort of theme relating to resilience and resources, but and it will be broader than that again. So I think I'm going to unmute so you can all wave goodbye to each other again, and look forward to seeing you all in a fortnight. Keep in touch along the way. Natalie, I am going to add you to the list, rest assured. And I look forward to seeing you all and anyone else you want to bring along with you next time. Bye for now. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.